I just want to apologize in advance if I cough. I was sick over the weekend and I'm still recovering from it, and talking is one of the things that kind of triggers it, so I'll try and cut that out if I do cough. But if that's why I'm coughing if I do cough. So, for my book report, I did The Bluest by Toni Morrison. I really enjoyed this book. The writing is a lot different than anything I've ever read. She has a very unique way of describing things, and just like the way that she relates to things that you didn't think could really be related. The format is a bit weird because it's split into kind of sections and then chapters within those sections. So it's split into the 4 seasons, and then within that there's a little pre-dialogue at the beginning, basically just talking about an average Dick and Jane. They have a dog, they have a mother, they live in this perfect little house, and then it takes part of that and puts it as the names of the chapters. So it's kind of just saying how the people in this book do not have that life, but that's kind of the life that they're hoping for. The characters in this book, there are quite a few main characters. There's not really one over the rest. There's Claudia and Frida. They are sisters and they live with their mother. I can't remember if their father lives with them as well, but if he does, he's not really mentioned in it. Their mom works a lot. She tries to provide for them as much as she can. So the girls are kind of just on their own. They kind of just do their own thing. And then they have 2 house guests. One is Mr. Henry. He's just floating around houses, kind of. He doesn't have a huge part in the story, except for that he kind of just flatters them. He makes them feel like real girls and all that kind of stuff. And then their second house guest is Piccola, who is the same age as Frida. And Frida and Piccola are both 2 or 3 or 4 years older than Claudia. So Claudia is about 10, so they're in their early teens. Piccola comes to live with them because her family has had quite a few hardships. Her brother is always running away. He just comes and goes as he wants, kind of. Her mother is pretty abusive towards her, which was pretty typical back then, but it's still pretty bad even for that time. Her father is kind of a drunken mess. He tried to set their house on fire, and then he also raped Piccola, and she ended up being pregnant with his baby, which comes into play later in the book. But so at the beginning, she's living with them just because her father was trying to burn the house down, so they can't really go back to live with him. But even before it gets into that, it gets into her pregnancy. So it's talking about how her baby died along with the marigolds. So they planted marigolds at the beginning of the winter, hoping that would be like a way to God to ask, like, please let this baby live, please let Piccola have her baby, and let us see it in all of its ugliness, which I'll get to the ugliness in a second. But they kind of just planned this as a way to symbolize, like, the beginning of the baby too, but both the marigolds and the babies die. So throughout the book, the marigolds symbolize death, and I think a lot of the symbolism in this book has to do with plants and nature, because they also use dandelions to symbolize life. They talk about how they're very strong and how they were able to bloom even when the marigolds were not. But the whole story kind of interloops in itself. There's not a super clear timeline. But after Piccola does go to live with the Breedloves, she starts her period, which they don't really know what's going on, but Frida is like, don't worry, that just means you can have a baby now, which they say because that's what they think it means, and they don't know that later in the book she will end up having a baby, and that will be a lot more important part than they just see as her becoming a woman, basically. And so when they start mentioning the baby, there's a quote that is, "We thought at the time it was because Pecola was her father's baby that the marigolds did not grow." So again, with the symbolism between the two, that's kind of what they set up as the premises for why the baby died and why the marigolds died. They kind of just blame the two events on the other variable of it. And so Pecola's life is obviously pretty ugly. It's not just, she herself is not just physically ugly, but her lifestyle is ugly, the events in her life are ugly, the other people in her life are ugly, her attitude is ugly, her mindset is ugly. Everything about it is kind of just like a dreary, downy, like nothing good ever comes of my life kind of type beat. And so, but she's also convinced that her life would be fixed if she just had blue eyes. So if nothing else changed but she had blue eyes, she thinks her life would go perfectly, and that would end all of her misery, basically. Her mother is a big part of the ugliness in this book, because it talks about her mother's youth, and she did not start out ugly. So it talks about how she was super thin, super beautiful, like just your typical, like, World War I kind of housewife. She was very attentive, she was very caring, she was very vibrant. But then as she met Collie, her husband, and she started having children, she just grew old, basically, and got very ugly, as they put it a lot in this book. They describe anything bad as ugly, basically. Instead of just not good, it's ugly to them, because they see it as not what their lifestyle could be, and they think it could be beautiful if a few things changed. So, and then another ugly factor of Pecola's life is her father. In her father's youth, his father left when he was very young, and then his mother also left him, so he ended up going with his aunt Jimmy, which is a bit confusing because generally it's Uncle Jimmy, but it was his Aunt Jimmy. And so his Aunt Jimmy eventually dies, and he doesn't really know what to do because he doesn't belong to anybody past that. He has cousins, but it's through other family members that he doesn't know as well, and they're not like his first cousins. It's third cousins, fourth cousins, very distant family that's still family, but he doesn't want to take that as the people who are like his people. So he goes to find his father, and his father is fine with how his life is. He does not want anything to do with Collie. Sorry, I don't really know how to say his name. But he doesn't want anything to do with him, just like before he was born. And so he basically just sends him on his way, says, don't try and like connect with me. I don't want to be a part of your life. I didn't then, I don't now. And so Coley kind of has a very ugly life as well. He turns into a drunken mess. He doesn't really know how to connect with other people, especially his children. It talks about how he doesn't know. It's part of the writing that's a little bit disturbing. He doesn't know whether he's supposed to connect with his children through like sympathy and emotion, or if he's supposed to be intimate with his children. So one night when Pecola is home doing the dishes all by herself, Coley comes in and he just wants to like embrace her. He wants to like love her with everything in him, but he doesn't know how he's supposed to do that, so he gets intimate with her, which is when she gets pregnant with the baby. So basically he rapes her, and that's how she ends up having her father's baby later in the book. And then after that, I'm not sure where it happened in the actual timeline, but right after that happened in the book, Pecola goes to see Soaphead Church, who is basically this guy who is claiming himself to be God on earth. And he tells everyone that he can take away their sadness, he can take away anything that they don't like about their life. He can tell them things they need to know. He can tell them who your enemies are. He can tell you what will make your life better. He can make your life better for you. And so all of these people are coming to him for help. And Piccola decides to go to him with her only wish in life, which is for her blue eyes, because she is convinced that will make everything better. And so he says that he'll give her what she wants. And so he says that he'll kind of like bring it up to God as a priest would. Except he has her feed this really ugly dog that he does not like. Except she feeds him poison, and he says, like, if the dog acts weird, then you will get your wish. If he acts normal, then you're going to be stuck with this ugliness in your life. And so, obviously, since it's being poisoned, the dog acts up. And so, Piccola, it doesn't say when she gets her blue eyes, but she does get her blue eyes just through that guy playing God. And then after she wishes for blue eyes, the priest, he actually writes a letter to God, which I also found pretty weird, because generally they would just talk to him, like let them know what Piccola would want, but he writes a letter to him, and in this letter, he is basically saying, like, I'm better than you, I gave Piccola blue eyes and you did not. And so he's basically putting himself above God. But he's also confessing to God that he likes, as Collie does as well, he likes being intimate with children, especially young girls. He likes their innocence, their youth, their purity. He just likes, like, their essence of being young. And so that's kind of all we hear about Soaphead Church. He's kind of a weird character. That was one of the parts of the book that was really, it was very straightforward, but also weird and hard to comprehend why that was happening. After that in the book, in the final summer chapter, it talks again about Piccola's baby. It comes up quite a few times, whether it's just, like forward playing what's going to happen later in the book, or whether it's just like when that was actually happening. But it talks a little more about how before Piccola even got pregnant, that Frida and Claudia were planting their trees and praying to God, please let us like have Piccola's baby, like let her give birth to it, so that we can see if the ugliness of Piccola and the ugliness of Collie, her father, will make basically like an even uglier baby. So a baby with an even hard life or an ugly life in these senses. But unfortunately the baby dies along with the marigolds. So that's obviously not very good, except for it maybe is a good ending, considering that Piccola probably doesn't want to have her father's baby and probably doesn't want an ugly baby. And then the book ends by a page that I thought was really nice to read. It just, the way it's worded, I think this author is very talented with the way she can word things. It basically talks about how everyone loves differently, and that is why it is so hard for the people in this book to like understand how to love each other, and why they're so focused on their own ugliness instead of kind of working with each other to make their lives beautiful. It kind of sums up why Coley and Soaphead are so, like, want to be, like, more than loving with children, because they just, like, crave to love their innocence, and they don't know how to love them other than that. So I would definitely recommend this book to probably anyone. It is a bit graphic to read, because there are a few rape scenes. There are a few other scenes like that where it's just really interestingly worded. But I think this author is very talented, and I would definitely read one of her books again. But I would recommend this to anyone who asked, because I really enjoyed reading it. And yeah.